I also welcome Professor Arun, who is the expert of the next session and ex-Vice Chancellor of Punjab University, Chandigarh. Now I take an opportunity to introduce our session expert, Professor Harmohinder Singh Bedi, Honorable Chancellor, Central University of Himachal Pradesh. He's also serving as Council Member of Indian Council of Social Science Research, MHRD, Government of India, and member of National Monitoring Committee on Minority Education, Government of India. Dr. Bedi has also served as Professor Emeritus, Punjabi University, Patiala from 2012 to 2014. He retired as Professor and Head of Department of Hindi, Guru Nanak Dev University, Amritsar, where he also served as Dean and Director of Affairs of Kabir, Sadhguru Ram Singh and Swami Vivekanand. Apart from several regional rewards and honors, he is felicitated by the President of India by the award of Hindi Sevi Puraskar 2017 and Punjab government by the award of Shiromani Hindi Sahitकार 2004 for his contribution to the field of Hindi language. He has also served as Hindi advisor to the Ministry of Labour and Employment and Ministry of Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution GOI. He has also been on the panel of National Language Council, Government of India, for preparing draft of the new policy. He has written and edited over 30 books and has published on all national journals of Hindi. He has been regularly writing columns for several Hindi newspapers. Recently, Government of India conferred the Padma Shri Award on Professor Harmohinder Singh for his distinguished service in the field of literature and education. The award is in recognition of his service as a Punjabi Hindi author and academician with over 30 books to his credit. May I request Professor Harmohinder Singh to deliver an expert talk.
परमादरणीय डॉक्टर ग्रोवर साहब, सभागार में उपस्थित विद्वान दोस्तों, प्रिय विद्यार्थियों, भारत के स्वतंत्रता आंदोलन के 75 वर्षों को समझने के लिए पंजाब के उस संघर्ष को समझना बहुत जरूरी है जिसने अंततोगत्वा देश को स्वतंत्रता दिलाई। देश के संघर्ष के दिनों में 1857 से लेकर ये बड़ा स्पष्ट एक उल्लेख है कि 1947 तक जो भारत के स्वतंत्रता का इतिहास लिखा गया, भारत सरकार ने लगभग 15 खंडों में भारत की स्वतंत्रता के संघर्ष के ऊपर एक दस्तावेज प्रकाशित किए। इन दस्तावेजों में कोई भी ऐसा पृष्ठ नहीं है जिस पर पंजाब के द्वारा स्वतंत्रता संग्राम में दिए गए योगदान को रेखांकित ना किया गया हो। कुछ बड़ी प्रमुख तथ्य और घटनाएं हैं जिन्हें आजादी के अमृत महोत्सव के समय हमें अपनी स्मृति में लाना चाहिए। एक शुरू से अवधारणा कुछ इतिहासकारों ने, अंग्रेज इतिहासकारों ने यह बनाई कि 1857 के प्रथम जो एक स्वतंत्रता आंदोलन का एक क्रांतिकारी कदम था, पंजाब उसमें से पिछड़ गया। कई तरह की बातें रियासतों को लेकर, रियासतों के जो उस समय राजा थे उनको लेकर कई तरह के भ्रम फैलाए गए। पर अभी 1857 की क्रांति का जो इतिहास जिसमें पंजाब को अनदेखा नहीं किया गया, और उसमें ये लिखा गया कि 1857 की क्रांति की भूमिका बांधने में पंजाब अग्रगण्य था, सबसे आगे था। और एक बहुत बड़ी उदाहरण हमारे सामने रखी गई कि कूका आंदोलन के प्रवर्तक, नामधारी आंदोलन के प्रवर्तक सतगुरु राम सिंह ब्रिटिश सरकार में सेना में थे, और 1857 की क्रांति के समय उन्होंने सेना को छोड़ा और 1857 की क्रांति को एक नया बल मिला। आप कूका आंदोलन का इतिहास पढ़कर देखिए कि पूरे कूका आंदोलन के जितने उस समय बड़े बड़े कूका आंदोलन से जुड़े हुए, चाहे वो सिपा सलार थे, चाहे उनके रहनुमाई थे, और चाहे उनके फॉलोअर्स थे, उन्होंने अंग्रेज सरकार के खिलाफ एक बड़ी लंबी लड़ाई लड़ी। और 1857 के बाद का जो 1857 की क्रांति के साथ जुड़ा हुआ इतिहास है, उसमें सतगुरु राम सिंह, सतगुरु हरि सिंह, सतगुरु प्रताप सिंह, इन लोगों की भूमिका देखिए। और उन्होंने अहिंसा को मानकर जो पहला असहयोग आंदोलन था, वह कूका नामधारियों ने शुरू किया। महात्मा गांधी ने भी यंग इंडिया में लिखा कि असहयोग आंदोलन, मेरे असहयोग आंदोलन से पूर्व पंजाब में सिख भाइयों ने असहयोग आंदोलन की शुरुआत की थी। अब महात्मा गांधी का ये कहना, यंग इंडिया में एक लेख लिखना बहुत बड़ी बात थी, जिसकी ओर पूरे देश का ध्यान गया। और 1857 के उन पृष्ठों को पुनः उसका अध्ययन किया गया कि पंजाब की क्या भूमिका रही है। असहयोग आंदोलन देखिए कि नामधारी संप्रदाय से जुड़े हुए लोगों ने जो वृक्ष ब्रिटिश सरकार ने उस समय जो नहरें निकाली थी उसके किनारों पर लगाए, तो नामधारियों ने उन वृक्षों की दातन तक नहीं की। उन्होंने कहा कि ये गुलामी के प्रतीक हैं, ये वृक्ष, इनकी दातन को भी हमने ग्रहण नहीं करना। उन्होंने अपनी डाक व्यवस्था शुरू की 1865 में। उन्होंने कहा कि अंग्रेज की डाक व्यवस्था का हमने इस्तेमाल नहीं करना, हम इसका बहिष्कार करते हैं। उन्होंने डाकखाने, रेलवे, वो घोड़ियों के ऊपर यात्रा करते थे और डाक बांटा करते थे। ये कितना बड़ा 1857 की क्रांति के बाद पंजाब के लोगों ने ब्रिटिश सरकार के खिलाफ एक इतना बड़ा आंदोलन खड़ा कर दिया, और पूरे का पूरा पंजाब उस आंदोलन के साथ जुड़ता चला गया। और ये स्वतंत्रता आंदोलन की एक पृष्ठभूमि तैयार हुई, और उस पृष्ठभूमि में आगे चलकर स्वतंत्रता संग्राम के लिए पंजाब के प्रयत्न और भी रंग लाए। आप देखिए कि काला पानी कहते थे उस समय। काले पानी की जिन लोगों को सजाई हुई, आज भी आप देखिए वहां जाकर वीर सावरकर भी वहीं थे, और वहां एक बहुत बड़ी एक सूची लगी हुई है, और उस सूची में 172 लोगों की एक सूची मैंने वहां जाकर पढ़ी। 82 काले पानी की सजाएं पाने वाले पंजाबी थे, हिंदू थे, मुसलमान थे, सिख थे, और इतनी कड़ी सजाएं उनको दी गई कि उन्होंने 1857 की क्रांति के बाद जो पंजाब में अंग्रेजों के खिलाफ जो चेतना जगाई, उनके कारण उन लोगों को काले पानी की सजाएं दी गई। और 82 की जो लिस्ट है उसमें से 40 से ऊपर वहीं वो शहीद हुए, वहीं वो उनका देहांत हुआ। एक बात की ओर मैं ध्यान दिलाना चाहता हूं, पंजाबी के एक बहुत बड़े कवि, उनका नाम था दीवान सिंह, उनके साथ ये लफ्ज जुड़ गया, दीवान सिंह काले पानी। और दीवान सिंह काले पानी वो उस समय जो अंग्रेज भारतीयों को तसीहे देते थे जेल में, उनका इलाज किया करते थे। और दीवान सिंह काले पानी पूरे रूप से सिख थे और उनका इलाज करते करते उन्होंने ब्रिटिश सरकार का विरोध करना शुरू किया और दीवान सिंह काले पानी को मारकर उस समंदर में फेंक दिया गया, क्योंकि ये ब्रिटिश सरकार के खिलाफ उन जख्मी भारतीयों को भी भड़काता है आजादी के लिए। आज दीवान सिंह काले पानी की किताबें आप पढ़िए, उन्होंने पंजाब की उस चेतना का जिक्र किया है कि जिन लोगों को सजाएं मिली थी उनका ब्रिटिश साम्राज्य के प्रति क्या दृष्टिकोण था और किस तरह से उन्होंने नगरों, कस्बों, शहरों, छोटे छोटे मोहल्लों में ब्रिटिश सरकार के खिलाफ 1857 की क्रांति के बाद लोगों में आजादी की एक तड़प पैदा की थी। इन अध्यायों का भारतीय इतिहास के स्वतंत्रता संग्राम में कोई बहुत बड़ा उल्लेख नहीं है, पर अब 1947 के बाद, बल्कि 1980 के बाद जो देश की आजादी का इतिहास अलग अलग ढंग से संपूर्ण किया गया, उसमें नामधारी वीरों का योगदान, सतगुरु राम सिंह का योगदान, दीवान सिंह काले पानी की भूमिका और काले पानी की सजाओं काटने वाले लोगों के परिवारों के प्रति एक नया इतिहास पंजाब के अध्यायों का इस देश के स्वतंत्रता संग्राम में जुड़ा। अब जो स्वतंत्रता का 75 वर्ष स्वतंत्रता का जो अमृत महोत्सव मनाया जा रहा है, मुझे लगता है कि ऐसे समय में इन अप्रकाशित जो अध्याय हैं भारतीय स्वतंत्रता संग्राम के, उनको उजागर करने की जरूरत है। कभी हम पूरे इस परिवेश में पंजाब के योगदान को पूरा समझ सकेंगे। हम सब पंजाब के रहने वाले हैं, बहुत सारे पंजाबी देशभक्तों के बारे में हम बहुत कुछ जानते हैं, बार बार उनको याद किया जाता है, पर आप देखिए कि पूरे देश की आजादी की लहर को तीव्र गति देने के लिए प्रमुख घटनाएं पंजाब की भूमि पर घटी। हमारे सामने जलियांवाला बाग है। 13 अप्रैल 1919 रोल्ट एक्ट के विरोध में बहुत बड़ा नरसंहार हुआ। अभी जलियांवाले बाग की शताब्दी मनाई गई और 1403 लोगों के नाम ढूंढे गए वहां जो नरसंहार में मारे गए। पहले कोई 700 कहता था, कोई 800 कहता था, अब 1500 के करीब निहत्थे लोगों के ऊपर जो अत्याचार अंग्रेज सरकार ने किए, और वो लोग रॉलेट एक्ट के विरोध में वहां इकट्ठे हुए थे। और इस घटना से पूरे देश में आजादी की तड़प बढ़ गई। महात्मा गांधी 21 दिन आकर अमृतसर में रहे। अमृतसर के गलियों में, मोहल्लों में एक एक व्यक्ति से जाकर मिले और ऑल इंडिया कांग्रेस में जो उन्होंने रिपोर्ट महात्मा गांधी ने दी, उसमें 3 बातें लिखी। उन्होंने कहा कि ये जो देश की आजादी की लड़ाई का संग्राम पूरे देश में चल रहा है, जलियांवाला बाग उसका एक बहुत बड़ा केवल प्रतीक नहीं है, प्रेरणा स्रोत हम लोगों के लिए बन रहा है। दूसरी बात उन्होंने कही कि पंजाब में स्वतंत्रता की लहर का जो पहला बड़ा घटनाक्रम की एक हमें सजीव जो उदाहरण है वो जलियांवाला बाग है। और तीसरी बात उन्होंने कही कि देश की आजादी के लिए कुर्बानियों का जो सिलसिला काले पानी की सजाओं से शुरू हुआ था, उसकी निरंतरता जलियांवाले बाग की घटना में देखी जा सकती है। ये पंजाब का योगदान है। और उस समय जलियांवाले बाग की गूंज ब्रिटिश सरकार के इंग्लैंड तक पहुंची। आप सब जानते हैं उस समय भगत सिंह, बहुत छोटी उम्र थी उनकी, 12-13 साल। उन्होंने जलियांवाले बाग के बारे में, हत्याकांड के बारे में पढ़ा, सुना। वो अमृतसर आए भगत सिंह, उन्होंने आकर माथा टेका और एक खाली बोतल में जलियांवाले बाग की मिट्टी को रखा। अपनी बहन अमर कौर के घर गए। रोज सुबह उठकर भगत सिंह उस मिट्टी, खून से सनी हुई मिट्टी के सामने नतमस्तक होते थे। उनकी बहन ने पूछा कि ये क्या है? उन्होंने कहा कि ये शहीदों की मिट्टी है, अभी बात समझ में नहीं आएगी। आजादी का सूर्य इसी बोतल से निकलेगा और देश आजाद होगा। ये भगत सिंह ने उस समय बड़ी छोटी उम्र में यह महसूस कर लिया था कि पंजाब का जो राष्ट्रीय स्वतंत्रता का आंदोलन है, जलियांवाले बाग की कुर्बानियां एक नया सूर्य आजादी का पैदा करेगी। भगत सिंह, आप देखिए कि उस समय लाला लाजपत राय पंजाबी थे और वो एक पत्रिका निकालते थे, वंदे मातरम। भगत सिंह ने वंदे मातरम के सभी लेख पढ़े, क्योंकि भगत सिंह की जो पृष्ठभूमि थी वो आर्य समाज से जुड़ी हुई थी। भगत सिंह के दादा को आर्य समाज में बहुत कम लोग थे जो स्वामी दयानंद से दीक्षित हुए थे। भगत सिंह के दादा को स्वामी दयानंद ने आर्य समाज में दीक्षित किया था। और आर्य समाज उस समय देश की स्वतंत्रता के लिए पहली तड़प पैदा करने वाली संस्था थी। और स्वामी दयानंद ने पंजाब में आर्य समाज के आंदोलन को खड़ा किया। ग्रोवर साहब बैठे हैं कि पहला जो डीएवी स्कूल था वह लाहौर में बना, जो बाद में डीएवी कॉलेज लाहौर भी कहलाया। और उसमें भगत सिंह रोज शाम को उस कॉलेज में जाते थे। लाला लाजपत राय बच्चों को शाम को, जिन बच्चों को देव भाषा नहीं आती थी, देवनागरी लिपि नहीं आती थी, आर्य भाषा नहीं आती थी, वो का खा गा उनको लिखना सिखाया करते थे। और भगत सिंह लाला लाजपत राय के चरणों में बैठकर आजादी के कई पाठ लाला जी से पढ़ा करते थे। ये स्वतंत्रता संग्राम में भगत सिंह की भूमिका, ये स्वतंत्रता संग्राम में आर्य समाज का योगदान, ये कोई मामूली बात नहीं थी। स्वामी दयानंद ने हिंदी की भी अलख जगाई और आजादी की भी अलख जगाई। अभी वेदों की बात हो रही थी। ऋग्वेद पहला वेद है, वो पंजाब की धरती पर लिखा गया, रचा गया। ऋषियों ने यही व्यास, जिस दरिया को हम कहते हैं विपाशा, इन सब दरियाओं के किनारे ऋषियों ने ऋग्वेद की रचना की। और जब स्वामी दयानंद आते थे, वो ऋग्वेद को अपने सिर पर धारण कर लाहौर, अमृतसर, लुधियाना की गलियों में घूमा करते थे। और उन्होंने अपने प्रारंभिक जो भाषण दिए उसमें वो कहा करते थे कि वेद की जो ऋचाएं हैं वो स्वतंत्रता, वो नैतिकता का, वो एक अलग तरह की सात्विक जिंदगी जीने का संदेश देती है और पंजाबी मुक्त हो, आत्मा उनकी बलवान बने, मुक्त हो रूढ़ियों से और मुक्त हो जो पराई शास्त्र व्यवस्था हमें दी गई है। ये स्वामी दयानंद संदेश देते थे। और 1857 की क्रांति पर जो एक अब नई जो खोज हुई है, उसमें स्वामी दयानंद ने 1857 की क्रांति के बाद पंजाब की धरती पर आकर देश की स्वतंत्रता के संग्राम को कैसे आगे लेकर गए, उसकी एक बहुत बड़ी उदाहरण है। वह उदाहरण है हरिद्वार में गुरुकुल कांगड़ी की। स्वामी दयानंद से प्रभावित होकर उस समय स्वामी श्रद्धानंद ने गुरुकुल कांगड़ी बनाया। वो जालंधर के रहने वाले थे और गुरुकुल कांगड़ी उस समय देश की आजादी की एक वैचारिक लहर को, एक दार्शनिक लहर को, एक अतीत की सोई हुई गरिमा को जगाने का बहुत बड़ा केंद्र बना। मैं विस्तार में नहीं जाना चाहता कि जितने बड़े बड़े पंजाब के देशभक्त हुए हैं वो किसी ना किसी तरह से गुरुकुल कांगड़ी से जुड़े हुए थे। वहां महात्मा गांधी भी जाते थे, हिंदी का बहुत बड़ा लेखक यशपाल भी जाता था, वहां आगे हिंदी के बहुत बड़े लेखक वो भी जाया करते थे। एक देश की स्वतंत्रता आंदोलन का एक बहुत बड़ा केंद्र पंजाब में गुरुकुल कांगड़ी बना और उसके पीछे जो आंदोलन स्वामी दयानंद ने आर्य समाज के माध्यम से खड़ा किया था वह उसकी शक्ति थी। इसलिए जो आर्य समाज का इतिहास है, उस आर्य समाज के इतिहास में पंजाब के उस स्वतंत्रता आंदोलन के भी कई अध्याय जुड़े हुए हैं। आज ऐसे अध्यायों का भी पर पुनर्विचार करने की जरूरत है और आजादी के स्वतंत्रता के अमृत महोत्सव ने ये हमें एक मौका दिया है कि हम उन संदर्भों को भी देश की स्वतंत्रता के इतिहास में जोड़े जो संदर्भ बहुत प्रासंगिक थे उस समय देश की आजादी के संघर्ष में। इसलिए ये जो आज जिस संगोष्ठी में हम बैठे हैं, उस संगोष्ठी का एक मंतव्य यह भी है कि पंजाब के उन गौण जो घटनाएं हैं, पंजाब की जो प्रमुख घटनाएं हैं, उन पर भी विचार किया जाए और इस देश की आजादी के आंदोलन में पंजाब के योगदान को देखा जाए। आप देखिए कि पंजाब में एक बहुत बड़े मदन लाल ढींगरा देशभक्त हुए हैं। मदन लाल ढींगरा अमृतसर के रहने वाले थे। मदन लाल ढींगरा इंग्लैंड गए और वहां एक कर्जन वैली था। वो पहले अमृतसर का डीसी था, बाद में वो इंग्लैंड चला गया और वहां जो देशभक्तों की रैलियां होती थी इंडिया हाउस में, वो आपस में मिलते थे, तो वह उसकी रिपोर्ट भारत में किया करते थे और जो लोग विदेश में रहकर भारत की स्वतंत्रता के लिए प्रयत्न कर रहे थे उनके परिवारों को बहुत बुरी तरह से पीटा जाता था और तरह तरह की सजाएं दी जाती थी कि आपके बच्चे, आपके रिश्तेदार इंग्लैंड में जाकर ब्रिटिश सरकार की जो जड़ें हैं उसको काटने में लगे हुए हैं। मदन लाल ढींगरा के पिताजी अंग्रेजों के बहुत भगत थे। उन्होंने कहा कि ये मदन लाल ढींगरा हमारे लिए नई नई मुसीबतें खड़ी करता है। उन्होंने उसको इंग्लैंड भेज दिया गया। उनकी पहली मुलाकात इंडिया हाउस में वीर सावरकर से हुई। मदन लाल ढींगरा ने कहा कि मैं पंजाब का रहने वाला हूं, मैं गुरुवाणी पढ़ता हूं, मैं देश के लिए कुछ करना चाहता हूं। वीर वीर सावरकर ने कहा कि अगर तू देश के लिए कुछ करना चाहता है तो करजन वैली ये सारी झूठी खबरें भारत में भेजता है। मदन लाल ढींगरा ने कहा कि मेरा पिता भी इन लोगों के साथ मिला हुआ है। उसने कहा कि अगर देश के लिए कुछ करना चाहते हो तो करजन वैली की आप हत्या करो। मदन लाल ढींगरा तैयार हो गए। इंडिया हाउस में एक मिलन समारोह था जिसमें वह एक चीफ गेस्ट के तौर पर आया। मदन लाल ढींगरा ने उसके ऊपर 3 गोलियां चलाई। आप हिम्मत देखिए, भगदड़ मच गई। वहां के जो सिपाही थे उन्होंने मदन लाल ढींगरा को पकड़ा। लास्ट गोली उसने फिर चलाई, ये देखने के कि ये जीवित है या मरा हुआ है। और पुलिस ने उसको पकड़ा। उसकी जेब से 2 पिस्तौल निकाले। मदन लाल ढींगरा ने कहा कि मेरे हाथ छोड़ो, मैं एक काम करना चाहता हूं। उनको लगा कि शायद कोई हथियार इसके पास होगा। मदन लाल ढींगरा का एक हाथ छोड़ा गया। उसने अपनी जेब से कंघी निकाली, अपने बाल ठीक किए। मदन लाल ढींगरा बहुत खूबसूरत कपड़े पहनता था, बहुत बन ठन कर रहता था, और वो हैरान रह गए। उन्होंने कहा कि मैं स्वीकार करता हूं कि मैंने इस व्यक्ति की हत्या की है, क्योंकि ये हमारी देश की आजादी के रास्ते में बहुत बड़ी रुकावट है। मदन लाल ढींगरा को पकड़ लिया गया। उसके कमरे की तलाशी ली गई। कमरे से दोस्तों 2 चीजें मिली। एक 1857 की क्रांति का चित्र, वहां ब्रिटिश सिपाही भारतीयों को मार रहे हैं। मदन लाल ढींगरा ने उसके ब्रिटिश सिपाहियों के ऊपर लिखा द डॉग्स। दूसरी श्रीमद् भगवत गीता की पोथी मिली। ब्रिटिश के जज ने एक दिन में फैसला सुनाया। फैसले में लिखा कि ये व्यक्ति गीता पढ़ता है, ये हत्या कर सकता है। दूसरा वाक्य लिखा कि ये व्यक्ति जिसने हत्या की है ये अंग्रेजों को डॉग कहता है, इसलिए इसको फांसी की सजा दी जाए। एक ही दिन में मदन लाल ढींगरा को फांसी की सजा दी गई। सुबह अखबार में खबर छपी, वीर सावरकर अपने सिर के ऊपर वो अखबारें रखकर लंदन के चौराहों पर लोगों में बांटते रहे कि एक पंजाबी युवक ने ब्रिटिश में आकर आजादी की एक नई शमा को रोशन किया है, और सारा इंग्लैंड उसको प्रणाम करे। ये मदन लाल ढींगरा का इतिहास में कहीं कोई बहुत बड़ा नाम नहीं है। मदन लाल ढींगरा ने वो कारनामा किया जिसके कारण पूरी दुनिया जाग गई कि ब्रिटिश हुकूमत से निजात भारतीय प्राप्त करना चाहते हैं, और उसका हीरो बना मदन लाल ढींगरा। मदन लाल ढींगरा के बारे में कोई जानकारी नहीं थी। मैंने अमृतसर में रहकर मदन लाल ढींगरा पर कुछ जानकारियां इकट्ठी की, एक छोटी सी किताब लिखी। मुझे मौका मिला पंजाब स्कूल शिक्षा बोर्ड की एक 8वीं कक्षा की पाठ्य पुस्तक का संपादन करने का। मैंने मदन लाल ढींगरा का पाठ डाल दिया। ग्रोवर साहब बैठे हैं, वो भेजते हैं कि ये जो पाठ्य पुस्तक, ये जो टेक्स्ट बुक हम तैयार कर रहे हैं, वो 2-3 व्यक्तियों के पास भेजते हैं कि इसका निरीक्षण किया जाए। और जिन व्यक्तियों ने निरीक्षण किया उन्होंने कहा जी बाकी तो पाठ्य पुस्तक बहुत अच्छी है, ये मदन लाल ढींगरा कौन है, इसका पाठ निकालिए। मुझे स्कूल एजुकेशन बोर्ड ने अप्रोच किया कि डॉक्टर साहब ये पाठ निकाल दो, बाकी किताब छप जाएगी। मैंने कहा किताब छपने में मेरी कोई रुचि नहीं है, ये पाठ मैं निकाल नहीं सकता। उस समय जो एजुकेशन मिनिस्टर थे उनके पास बात पहुंची, तो उन्होंने कहा कि सेक्रेटरी को कहा कि आप इसके बारे में बल्कि देखो ये छपनी है कि नहीं छपनी, सेशन शुरू होने वाला है। एजुकेशन सेक्रेटरी ने एक पूछा कि मदन लाल ढींगरा की, जो उस समय अनिल जोशी मिनिस्टर थे, अनिल जोशी जी से पूछा कि कोई ऐसे एक्सपर्ट बताओ अमृतसर के। तो उन्होंने कहा जी मुझे तो इसके बारे में जानकारी नहीं है, पाठ्य पुस्तक के बारे में। तो उन्होंने कहा नहीं, ये मदन लाल ढींगरा, क्योंकि आप अमृतसर के हैं, मदन लाल ढींगरा के पाठ के बारे में बताइए आप। जोशी जी को कुछ पता नहीं था। जोशी जी ने कहा जी कि आप एक एक्सपर्ट राय प्रोफेसर बेदी जी से लीजिए। सेक्रेटरी ने कहा कि उन्होंने जो किताब का संपादन किया है, तो उन्होंने कहा जी फिर आप इस पाठ को जरूर शामिल करें। 10 साल लगाए हैं मदन लाल ढींगरा के दस्तावेज इकट्ठा करने में, बहुत मुश्किल से वो पाठ दर्ज हुआ। अब मुझे पता नहीं है कि उस टेक्स्ट बुक में वो है या नहीं। पंजाब के ये जो हीरो है, इनको अब समझने की जरूरत है कि किस तरह से देश की आजादी की लहर को विदेशों में भी प्रमोट करने में पंजाबी देशभक्त बहुत आगे की पंक्ति में खड़े होते हुए हमें दिखाई देते हैं। मदन लाल ढींगरा को जब पकड़ा गया तो उसकी जब तलाशी ली गई जेल में जाने से पहले, अब बहुत बड़ी बात है कि उसकी जेब में से करतार सिंह सराभा, जो बहुत बड़े देशभक्त है, उसकी तस्वीर निकली। और जब ऊधम सिंह को पकड़ा गया लंदन में, जब उसने ओडवायर की हत्या की, जब उसको पकड़ा गया तो वो उसकी जेब में से भगत सिंह की तस्वीर निकली। ये देशभक्तों की एक कोऑर्डिनेशन थी। अभी रजनीश जी कह रहे थे कि ये बड़े परस्पर जुड़े हुए सारे काम हैं। उसमें साइंसदान भी है, उसमें दार्शनिक भी है, उसमें संस्कृति वेता भी है, उसमें समाजशास्त्री भी है, उसमें देशभक्त भी है। तो इन कड़ियों को पंजाब के इस अमृत महोत्सव के समय इन कड़ियों को समझने की जरूरत है। और इसके समांतर देखिए आप, गदर पार्टी का मूवमेंट देखिए, बब्बर अकालियों का मूवमेंट देखिए, लाला हरदयाल की भूमिका देखिए। ये कोई मामूली बातें नहीं थी। इन लोगों ने आपस में कोऑर्डिनेशन रखी और एक बहुत बड़े स्वतंत्रता के राष्ट्रीय आंदोलन को एक बहुत शक्ति प्रदान की। और इस शक्ति के कारण आप देखिए कि संपूर्ण स्वतंत्रता का जो पहला प्रस्ताव था ना, वो रावी के किनारे, उसमें पंडित जवाहरलाल नेहरू भी थे। उन्होंने कहा कि हमें पूर्ण स्वतंत्रता चाहिए। ये प्रस्ताव लाहौर में पेश किया गया और उसके बाद आजादी के मूवमेंट ने एक नई दिशा ली और ये कहा गया कि स्वतंत्रता के लिए कौन कौन से मुद्दे होंगे। ये पंजाब की भूमि पर उसका फैसला हुआ। अब इन संदर्भों को, इन रिपोर्टों को, देश की आजादी की लड़ाई के दस्तावेज तो हैं, पर लोगों के सामने ये सारे तथ्य नहीं लाए गए। स्वतंत्रता के इस अमृत महोत्सव पर पंजाब की आजादी की लहर में जो पहचान है, उस पहचान में अलग अलग रंग भरने की जरूरत है। भगत सिंह जिस बम कांड में पकड़े गए थे, उसका एक्सपेरिमेंट रावी दरिया में किया गया और वो फट गया। एक व्यक्ति का हाथ उड़ गया। उसमें यशपाल हिंदी के बहुत बड़े लेखक थे, वो भी उस समय थे। आगे भी उस क्रांति दल के साथ जुड़े हुए थे। और सबसे बड़ी बात आप देखिए, पंजाबी के बहुत बड़े रचनाकार प्रोफेसर पूरन सिंह, प्रोफेसर पूरन सिंह ने देसी बम बनाने का वो फार्मूला देशभक्तों को दिया था। ये कोई तथ्य छुपा हुआ नहीं। उन्होंने अपने पत्र में, प्रोफेसर पूरन सिंह भी बहुत बड़े साइंटिस्ट थे, वो देश की आजादी के लिए उन्होंने इस क्रांति दल को एक बड़ी नई दिशाएं साइंस के माध्यम से दिखाई। और इसलिए आप आगे बहुत बड़े रचनाकार हैं, उनका आप उनकी यादें देखिए, यशपाल की यादें पढ़िए। वो बार बार के देशभक्तों के साथ उस समय के साहित्यकारों का क्या योगदान था, किस तरह से ये लिटरेरी पर्सनालिटीज उनके साथ जुड़ी हुई थी। मैंने अभी जलियांवाले बाग की बात की। जलियांवाला बाग का जब हत्याकांड घटा, नानक सिंह जो पंजाबी के बहुत बड़े उपन्यासकार हैं, वो वहां थे जलियांवाले बाग में, और इतनी भगदड़ मची कि नानक सिंह के ऊपर लाशों का ढेर बिछ गया। बड़ी मुश्किल से वो उस ढेर में से निकले, अर्ली इन द मॉर्निंग अपने घर गए, सारे कपड़े लहू से लथपथ थे। नानक सिंह कई दिन बोले नहीं जो उन्होंने देखा था, और बाद में उन्होंने जलियांवाले बाग के हत्याकांड के ऊपर एक बहुत बड़ी पुस्तक लिखी, खूनी विसाखी, और उस किताब को बैन कर दिया गया कि ये तो और आग में घी डालने वाली पोथी है। तो ये साहित्यकारों के बड़े प्रयत्न थे देश की स्वतंत्रता के लिए। वो केवल कविताएं नहीं रचते थे, उपन्यास कहानियां नहीं लिखते थे, वो डटकर देशवासियों का पॉलिटिकल मूवमेंट के साथ जुड़कर वह देश की आजादी में उतने ही शरीक थे जितने भगत सिंह, जितने लाला लाजपत राय, जितने मदन लाल ढींगरा, जितने करतार सिंह सराभा, वो उसी तरह से उनकी हिस्सेदारी थी। इसलिए आप भारतीय साहित्य पढ़कर देखिए, मैं इंडियन लिटरेचर की बात कर रहा हूं, हिंदी पंजाबी की जो जानकारियां हमें हैं, तमिल, बंगाली, उड़िया, असमिया, कोंकणी, कश्मीरी, डोगरी, आप कोई भी जबान पढ़कर देखिए, देश के साहित्यकारों के द्वारा देश की आजादी के लिए वो अग्रिम पंक्ति में खड़े होकर अपना योगदान देते रहे। पंजाब ने भी ऐसा ऐसा किया। ज्ञानी गुरमुख सिंह मुसाफिर बहुत बड़े रचनाकार, और देश की आजादी के लिए उनकी कुर्बानियां का कोई हिसाब ही नहीं है। इसलिए ये जो आंदोलन है, और खास करके जो अमृत महोत्सव मनाने का हमें एक मौका मिला है, तो पंजाब की इन कड़ियों को समझने की जरूरत है। अगर हम ये कड़ियां मैं तो हैरान रह गया, डॉक्टर साहब को ज्यादा पता होगा। एक हिंदी के लेखक है हंसराज रहबर, उन्होंने अभी हाल ही में एक किताब लिखी है, मेरे सात जन्म। और हंसराज रहबर बहुत बड़े साइंसदान थे, और उन्होंने बहुत सारे एक्सपेरिमेंट साइंस के किए। बेतार का तार, ये उनका एक बहुत बड़ा अध्याय है। और उनको पूछा गया कि आप ये काम क्यों करते हैं? उन्होंने कहा कि देशभक्तों के संदेश एक दूसरे को देने के लिए तार का बेतार वाला जो सिस्टम है वो मैं लागू करना चाहता हूं। तो आप देखिए कि हर वर्ग से, हर संप्रदाय से, हर संस्था से, चाहे वो कला है, कुछ है, लोग उस समय राष्ट्रीय आंदोलन में जागरूक हुए। और बहुत बड़ी भूमिका पंजाब की रही। गदर पार्टी का इतिहास पढ़कर देखिए, कामागाटा मारू, वो लोग इकट्ठे होकर एक जहाज में बैठकर वो गए, और देश की आजादी के लिए कितने दिन समुद्र में उनका वो बेड़ा खड़ा रहा। ये सारे के सारे प्रयास पंजाब की भूमि से हुए। और आज तक अभी कुछ साल पहले नामधारियों को सरकारी लिस्ट में शहीद करार नहीं दिया जाता था। इवन भगत सिंह को भी बहुत बाद में देशभक्तों की कुर्बानियों की लड़ी में रखा गया। तो कम से कम मुझे अब लगता है कि अगर लोग, सरकार में ये चेतना आई है कि स्वतंत्रता आंदोलन के इतिहास को अमृत महोत्सव हम माने। अमृत महोत्सव एक बहुत बड़ी हमारे पुरातन वैदिक साहित्य का एक बहुत बड़ा महोत्सव माना जाता है। और ये जो वेद ज्ञान है, आप देखिए कि जो वैदिक गणित के ऊपर जो पहली किताब थी, वह लाहौर में एक बहुत बड़े गणितज्ञ मैथमेटिशियन थे, स्वामी, अभी याद आ जाएगा, तो उन्होंने पहली वैदिक की पुस्तक लिखी थी। तो ये सारे का सारा जो काम है ना, ये पंजाब की धरती पर होता रहा। और इसीलिए स्वामी राम तीरथ ने पहली गणित के ऊपर 65 पेजों में एक किताब लिखी, और उस समय पूरे यूरोप के मैथमेटिक्स के लोगों ने उसका स्वागत किया। तो ये और स्वामी राम तीरथ का आप साहित्य पढ़कर देखिए, उनकी कविताएं पढ़कर देखिए, जापान में गए और उनका पूरा एक वैज्ञानिक दृष्टिकोण देखिए। ये सारे का सारा लाहौर की धरती पर वो स्वामी राम तीरथ वहां के कॉलेज में मैथमेटिक्स के प्रोफेसर थे। तो ये सब कुछ जो ज्ञान के जो नए नए स्रोत, चाहे वो पश्चिम से आ रहे थे, उनका भारतीकरण हमारे यहाँ के वैज्ञानिकों ने किया, हमारे यहाँ के समाजशास्त्रियों ने किया। और पंजाब को जो शपथ सिंधु की गरिमा थी, आप देखिए कि पहली हमारे देश में 2 बड़ी यूनिवर्सिटियां थी, वो यूरोप की यूनिवर्सिटियों से भी पहले थी, नालंदा और तक्षशिला। तक्षशिला पंजाब की यूनिवर्सिटी थी। अभी लाहौर के पास उसके पूरे अवशेष निकल आए हैं तक्षशिला यूनिवर्सिटी से। मैं वहां गया देखने, वहां पाठ्यक्रम भी निकल आया है। साउथ एशिया के विद्वान वहां सीखने आते थे। और पाठ्यक्रम क्या था? पाठ्यक्रम था ऋग्वेद की ऋचाओं का। पाठ्यक्रम में लगा हुआ था श्रीमद् भगवत गीता, पाठ्यक्रम में था धम्मपद, और पाठ्यक्रम था वाल्मीकि जी की आदि रामायण। ये साउथ एशिया के विद्वान 10 वर्ष वहां व्यतीत करते थे, भारतीय संस्कृति को, भारतीय चिंतन को, भारतीय दर्शन को समझकर तब वे अपने देशों में लौटते थे। ज्ञान का बहुत बड़ा आलोक स्तंभ उस समय तक्षशिला यूनिवर्सिटी के द्वारा पूरे विश्व को एक रास्ता दिखा रहा था। और ये सब कुछ घटित हो रहा था पंजाब की धरती पर। पाणिनि, जिसने संस्कृत का पहला व्याकरण रचा, वो पेशावर के रहने वाले थे। और पाणिनि, पेशावर पंजाब का हिस्सा था। और पाणिनि तक्षशिला में भाषा विज्ञान के, लिंग्विस्टिक्स के पहले भाषाविद थे, जो साउथ एशिया की जबानों के बारे में एक व्याकरणिक दृष्टि से ज्ञान बढ़ा रहे थे पूरे विश्व का। और उसके साथ आप देखिए चाणक्य भी वही प्रोफेसर थे जिन्होंने अर्थशास्त्र लिखा। और चाणक्य वहां तक्षशिला में सुबह उठकर श्रीमद् भगवत गीता के श्लोकों का गायन करते थे। तब उस विश्वविद्यालय की जो दिन की शुरुआत, दिनचर्या शुरू होती थी। ये ज्ञान, विज्ञान, अध्यात्म, धर्मशास्त्र ये पूरे का केंद्र पंजाब थी। इसलिए जब ये कड़ियां जुड़ती हैं तब राष्ट्र को, मैं तो कहता हूं पंजाबियों को भी तब बात समझ आएगी कि हम कितनी बड़ी वैज्ञानिक सामाजिक विरासत के मालिक हैं, कि जिनके कारण ये जो हमारा भारतवर्ष है हमने उसमें अपनी अलग पहचान भी बनाई, पर उसके साथ साथ जो भारतीयता की एक संवेदना है, उस संवेदना के साथ जुड़कर हमने पूरे विश्व को एक नए मार्ग पर भी हम लेकर गए। और उसकी वर्तमान में सबसे बड़ी उदाहरण देश के स्वतंत्रता के संघर्ष की वह कहानी है जिसमें बड़े नायक इस कहानी के पंजाबी लोग हैं। इसलिए अमृत महोत्सव के अवसर पर पंजाब को याद करने का अर्थ है देश की आजादी की लड़ाई में पंजाबियों के योगदान के आगे नतमस्तक होना। स्वतंत्रता के इस अमृत महोत्सव पर पंजाब की उन अध्यायों का जो पुनर्पाठ हम कर रहे हैं, उस पुनर्पाठ में से क्या स्वर निकलते हैं। रंजीत जी अभी कह रहे थे सर्बत दा भला, वासुदेव कुटुंबकम, ये जो स्वर है बाबे नानक की वाणी के। बाबे नानक ने क्या संदेश दिया? उन्होंने कहा कि किर्त करो, फिर कहा कि किर्त करने के बाद नाम जपो, और फिर उन्होंने कहा कि वंड छको। 2 मिनट और लूंगा, मैं अपनी बात समाप्त करूंगा। अभी बंगाली मूल के एक अर्थशास्त्री, उनको पीछे नोबेल पुरस्कार मिला द पुअर इकोनॉमिक्स किताब के ऊपर। उन्होंने एक बहुत बड़ी उदाहरण दी। उन्होंने कहा कि जो देश अंडर डेवलप्ड कंट्रीज हैं वो तब तक विकास नहीं कर सकते जब तक वो श्रम के महत्व को नहीं समझते, जब तक वो हाथ की निपुणता के साथ अपने देश के विकास में हाथ नहीं पटवाते। उन्होंने कहा कि मॉडर्नाइजेशन ठीक है, मशीनों का आना ठीक है, पर कहते जो हस्तकला है ना, हाथ की निपुणता है, जो श्रम है, अगर उसका सहारा अंडर डेवलप्ड कंट्रीज ले तो वह गरीबी के इस अर्थशास्त्र से बाहर आ सकते हैं। और जब वो भारत आए प्रधानमंत्री को मिलने, तो पत्रकारों ने पूछा कि आपको नोबेल पुरस्कार मिला है, कोई खास बात आप बताइए। तब तक वो सिख धर्म के बारे में, पंजाब के बारे में भी उनके पास जानकारी थी। उन्होंने कहा कि मैंने तो नया कुछ नहीं लिखा, मैंने तो जो पंजाब के बाबा नानक ने जो बात कही है कि किर्त करो, कहते अंडर डेवलप्ड कंट्री के लिए ये किर्त करो, कहते ये आदर्श जो स्लोगन है ये होना चाहिए। अब मित्रों आप देखिए कि आज हम कहाँ हैं, पंजाब की त्रासदी क्यों हो रही है? हमें श्रम करने की शक्ति कम हो गई है, ईमानदारी कम हो गई है, प्रभु की रजा में रहने का जो एक संदेश है हम उसको भूल गए हैं, और नाम जपने की जो सही जो उद्देश्य है कि किस तरह से हम अपने समाज को, अपने प्रांत को, अपने राष्ट्र को, अपने पड़ोसी को, विश्व को समझे, वह चेतना दिन ब दिन हम में से माइनस हो रही है। अगर आज पुनः हमें मार्ग, उस प्रगति के मार्ग पर, उस पुरातन पंजाब की विरासत के साथ जुड़ना है, तो इस अमृत महोत्सव के अवसर पर देश की संघर्ष गाथा में तब कोई मुसलमान नहीं था, कोई हिंदू नहीं था, कोई पारसी नहीं था, कोई बोधी नहीं था, कोई जैनी नहीं था, कोई मुसलमान नहीं था। पंजाब जीता था गुरुओं के नाम के ऊपर। तो आज पुनः अमृत महोत्सव के अवसर पर हमें अपनी उस परंपरा को याद करना है जिस परंपरा के कारण पंजाबियों की एक शान देश की आजादी की गाथा में स्वर्णिम अक्षरों में लिखी गई। आप सबका बहुत बहुत आभार।
प्रोफेसर हरविंदर सिंह सर का बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। उन्होंने बड़ी सरलता से पंजाब के वीरों, विशेष रूप से भगत सिंह, मदन लाल ढींगरा और विभिन्न पंजाबी साहित्यकारों प्रोफेसर पूरन सिंह, नानक सिंह का आजादी की लड़ाई में योगदान उजागर किया है। उन्होंने कूका आंदोलन, आर्य समाज, गुरुकुल कांगड़ी, नालंदा और तक्षशिला विश्वविद्यालयों का भी स्वतंत्रता संग्राम में महत्व बताया है। सर, आपका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। नेक्स्ट सेशन के स्पीकर प्रोफेसर अरुण ग्रोवर जी का भी बहुत बहुत स्वागत। मैं उनका परिचय देना चाहूंगी। Professor Arun Kumar Grover has done his MSc Honours in Physics in 1972 from Punjab University, Chandigarh. He completed his PhD in 1979 from Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, Tipper, Mumbai, and postdoc in 1984 from Imperial College, London. He remained an academic member of Department of Condensed Matter Physics and Material Science, Tipper, Mumbai. He served as 12th Vice Chancellor of Punjab University, Chandigarh from 2012 to 2018 and Raja Ramana Fellow at Peck, Chandigarh from 2019 to 21. He is a member of BOG Punjab Engineering College, Chandigarh. He is an experimental condensed matter physicist, having authored over 200 research papers on magnetism and superconductivity. He received Homi Bhabha Science and Technology Award of Department of Atomic Energy of Government of India in 1995 for his contributions in magnetism and superconductivity. Materials Research Society of India awarded him a MRS medal in 1996. Tipper had appointed him the convener of Homi Bhabha Birth Centenary Commemorations Committee from 2008 to 11. The Alumni Association of Tipper awarded him its Excellence Award in 2018, and he has served as a co-editor of Physics News from 2012 to 13. He was elected Fellow of National Academy of Sciences of India in 1997, as well as that of the Indian Academy of Sciences, Bangalore. He served as the Vice President of IASC from 2016 to 2018. Fellows of the National Science Academies in Chandigarh region have appointed him chair of a subcommittee to enhance their public outreach in partnership with Society for Promotion of Science and Technology in India. They have designated him as its vice president from 2020 to 25. He served as a member of governing body of CSIR from 2017 to 20. He continues to be chairperson of the Research Council of CSIR National Physics Laboratory, New Delhi, as well as that of Research Advisory Committee of ISER, Mohali. So I invite him to deliver the expert talk.
So good afternoon, young friends. So probably you already are saturated with a lot of lectures that have been poured on you. So I am going to take you through a slightly different story, and I'm going to use this PowerPoint presentation. And you can appreciate that I made this PowerPoint presentation independent of the earlier speakers. but you will find lots of contacts with in this PowerPoint presentation with what you have already heard. So just try to find the contacts on your own, and it will give you a broader perspective for the purpose of this 5-day festival. Maybe you are going to attend only the day one and not come on the subsequent days, but still the day one, little bit what you can comprehend while listening. But my PowerPoint presentation is going to be available for you because I have already shared it to the organizers and they can make it available for everyone by just uploading on their webpage. So the conference theme is creating future paths for scientific development in the 75th year of independence. So the conference title, and I was assigned the role of telling you role of scientists in Indian freedom struggle. Okay, little bit you have already heard, but I'm going to be more specific because it is my premise that the role of scientists in Indian freedom struggle has been in terms of the conception of planned development of India post Second World War via the expansion of scientific research and restructuring of higher education. Perhaps, I don't know whether most of you are school students or you are just entered the college. So you are at the threshold of a journey, and a journey which accelerated at the time of Indian independence. But the path of this journey was conceived by Indian scientists who were teachers of the universities and colleges which got created during the British times. But you have already been told there is a past to it. So as we walk through this presentation, you will get to know, okay, the whole thing over maybe a few thousand years. So, okay, so what is, you can sleep after the first slide. So I have given you a preview of my today's talk. So I'm going to describe you a narrative as to how Indian scientists, led by two stalwarts whose photographs you have already seen, namely Meghnad Saha and Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar, seized up the opportunities at the start of the Second World War, that is around 1939-1940, to enable Indian scientists to conceive plans for scientific research and development of India. So we got independence in 47, but the plan was already in place, and this process has commenced when the Second World War arrived, because the British faced certain problems in their engagements in the Second World War in Europe, and for that they need help from the colonies. So certain changes happened in India, and those changes gave us a plan for India's development from 47 onwards. Okay, so this is the premise. So what all happened? So Nehru and Subhash, Jawaharlal Nehru and Subhash, they advocated the idea of Purna Swaraj. You heard just Purna Swaraj a little while ago. And that idea was articulated in December of 1929 as Jawaharlal became the president of the Indian National Congress, replacing his own father, Motilal Nehru. And Indian political leaders had this confusion whether we should seek complete independence or we should be satisfied with a dominion status like a Commonwealth country, the way Canada is or Australia is or the New Zealand is to the British Crown. So there was this confusion, and young Bhagat Singh had said, no, we must have complete independence. So Jawaharlal Nehru and Bose sided with the proposition of Bhagat Singh, and they said, no, we must have complete independence. So on December 31, 1929, the tricolor flag was hosted by Nehru on the banks of Ravi in Lahore. We just heard from Professor Bedi. So on 26 January 1930, a resolution was put in where we said we must have complete independence. So this is the importance of that 26th January. That is why India was declared republic on 26th of January. 26th January has a history coming from 1930. So 1930 is the starting point of what I am going to describe to you. So, okay, Nehru and Subhash were together in 1930. 8 years down the line, Subhash becomes the president of the Indian National Congress. And Saha, an eminent physicist of India, who was a professor of physics at Allahabad University, a renowned scientist globally. So Saha was close both to Nehru and Subhash Bose. So Nehru was from Allahabad. He was teaching in Allahabad, so it's natural that they would know each other. But Subhash Bose, more importantly, was 3 years younger to Meghnad Saha at Calcutta, and they both had studied in the same college, namely the Presidency College. So they were in contact since then. So Saha, he had planted this idea in Bose's head that India must have a planning committee. Congress, India means, for the Indians, it was Indian National Congress, because that was the party which was leading the independence movement. So Indian National Congress must have a planning committee. And initially, M. Vishwesvaraya, an eminent engineer who got Bharat Ratna as India became independent in 1955. So Vishwesvaraya was chosen to be the president of that planning committee. But Saha felt that if the plan has to succeed, you need a political heavyweight to be chairing that committee. So he persuaded Bose to have Nehru appointed as a chairman of the planning committee. So India has a planning committee during the presidentship of Subhash Bose, and Nehru is supposed to be the president of that committee. And committee is made up of scientists who have to do all the groundwork. Just as today's Niti in Delhi, it has been recast, but Niti is a continuation of this planning idea of having planned development from 1938 onwards, and this is 1 year before the start of the Second World War. So, fine. Time progresses a little bit. And when the war commenced, for the first time this thing came in, India must be self-reliant, Atmanirbharta, manufacturing in India. All this is because the British factories were being bombed, and now they need materials which is manufactured somewhere else. So where do you manufacture it? You do it in your colony in Asia, and so you can't just start manufacture just like that, because it's not a technology transfer. You have to first, and you have to. They knew they were surveying the resources, so you needed to do research and then do the manufacturing. So that is how the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research was created, and they picked up Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar, who was a professor at Lahore. He was a very innovative professor at Lahore. So they picked him up to create this CSR in 1939. So there is a Saha who was born in Dhaka in East Bengal, and there is a Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar who was born in Punjab. It's now in Pakistan. So from East and West, there are these two eminent scientists. Luckily, they had known each other when they were together, as one of them was doing PhD in England, the other was gone as a postdoc in England between 1919 and 1921, after the First World War. So they knew each other. So this Bhatnagar teams up with Saha, and they both team up with all the other Indian scientists who are teaching in the universities of India. So now politicians are doing their job separately. There is Second World War, and Gandhi is there, and there is a non-cooperation movement, and all of them are put in prison, and this, that, and so on. So politicians were doing whatever they were doing. But here are a pair of these scientists. They got all the other scientists together, and they conceive a plan for development of India as and when the war would end. So they have conceived a plan. So now, how do you have the plan going? Because we are still a colonial government is in place, and India is ruled by that colonial government. So you need the support of the colonial government to have the whole thing going. So again, a bright idea was by Saha. So there was a Nobel laureate who was a fellow, who was the secretary of the Royal Society of London, who started his career as a mathematician, shifted over to the life sciences, and within a period of few years, A.V. Hill had got a Nobel Prize in physiology. He started as a mathematician during the First World War. It's very interesting history. You can just Google A.V. Hill and find out who A.V. Hill was. And A.V. Hill was at that time or had become a member of parliament from Cambridge. Cambridge is a city where the University of Cambridge is. It's a university town. He was an independent member of the parliament from the Cambridge city. Saha knew him. So they said, let's get him to India and listen to us. So Bhatnagar makes those moves because he had become a part of the government. So A.V. Hill was invited to India. Bhatnagar took him around to all the places where the universities were in India, where the scientists were in India. So he listened to them and agreed to endorse their plan. So that plan was submitted, accepted plan was given to the British government. They didn't do anything with it for a while. So he published it in the Nature as a four-page summary, and that is how it became a public document. And now the war was also had ended by August of 45, and now the work started on that plan. So it is that work which started and which got accelerated because by 1946, it was known, Churchill was gone, that India would be independent. And Nehru had become the vice president of the Viceroy's Council. So he was the head of the so-called national government at that time. So with Nehru so you can see now the connections you can all see, This Nehru is back. Subhash Bose, of course, in the meantime, you know the story of Subhash Bose. We lost him in 45. So Nehru is there, Saha is there, Bhatnagar is there, all the Indian scientists are there. And the work commences on implementation of development of India post Second World War. We got independence in 47. And what all has happened since then, okay, in some chronological way, I'm going to tell you. So this is in a nutshell what I'm going to talk. Those of you who wish to relax, they can sleep. Those of you who have some time to listen to it, so you can continue listening to this interesting story. Okay, I'll try to keep you awake, but I'm not sure that I can succeed. So, okay. What happened? Why is it not moving? Okay. So, Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. The Indian Academy of Sciences, sometime last year, namely on March 31, 2021, they brought out this book, Founders of Modern Science of India. So this book is an edited book by C.N.R. Rao and his wife, Indumati Rao. And this book, and it says, who are the scientists? When did the science in India, in terms of what we understand today? We had ancient science, fine. I'm not disputing, but the present day science, which is documentation, writing scientific papers, having refereed, blah, 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 putting in scientific journals. So this process, this book says in the preface, we find clear evidence of practice of modern science in India only in the 19th century. 19th century is just about 200 years old, okay? Less than 200 years old. So this is what it says. So it's not what I am saying. So this is what it says, okay? And 200 years is, there's mention of 1857, first war of independence. And coincidentally, the universities in India also were established by the East India Company, not by the. Till then, it was still an East India Company, in 1857. So, you must have education, places of higher education where you can go pursue the higher education. British set up these colleges and universities just to source out young people who would know a little bit of English, whom they can engage to administer India. So the young people like you, they have their own curiosities. Everybody has his or her own passion, and you will traverse and follow your passion, and you will reach up to the frontiers of whatever passion you have. Once you have reached the frontiers of your passion, Then at the frontiers, you find people who are pursuing knowledge from all over the world. So you become, once you reach the frontiers of knowledge, now you're part of an international community. Right? So the gap between you and the people who are driving the frontiers of knowledge, that gap has reduced. So the gap between the ruler and the ruled has reduced. The young people, in their own way, in their attempt to pursue their passion to the extreme, reduce the gap between the ruler and the ruled. And now you will say you should also be part of the rulers. And that is what is your contribution for seeking independence. So training yourself as a scientist is actually indirectly aiding the process of having Purna Swaraj. I don't know whether it makes sense to you. As I thought over it, I didn't think like this when I was a young student like you, but all this came to my conscious much later in life as the life progressed. But I'm just sharing it with you. So, okay, so this book has life stories of 16 scientists, and Tiana Rao describes, he says pioneers. So he has pioneers is Bose, Ramanujan, C.V. Raman. These are names you have heard. Okay. Then he says stars of yesteryears. It is Birbal Sani, Meghnad Saha, Bose, Janaki Ammal, and it says Ramalinga Swami, G.N. Ramchandran. Then he says architects and patrons. So it is P.C. Ray, Mana Lobis, Bhatnagar, Bhava, Sarabhai. Okay, and then in closing, he has two more names, namely D.N. Wadia, a very eminent geologist, and P. Maheshwari, okay, who was the innovator of test tube fertilization of angiosperms. So, okay, so there are 16 choices. This is a choice of C.N.R. Rao. Okay, some of the names you have already heard, okay, right, independent of my listing. So, of these, Bose and Ramanujan, J.C. Bose, we heard just now. Okay, J.C. Bose was gone in 1937, and Ramanujan, of course, was gone at a very young age, just 1920. Rest of the 14 people live up to the independence, 47. Okay, so they have a chance to contribute after the India becomes independent, and they have trained themselves to go to the frontier. So they have already reduced the gap between the rulers and the ruled. So all right, so this is this. Okay, so let's move forward. So this is a book which was brought by Indian Academy of Sciences last year. 10 years earlier, in 2009, when the Indian National Science Academy, which is today located in Delhi, which had started its journey in Calcutta in 1934, they had also brought a book, okay, which said Bright Spark, inspiring Indian scientists from the past. So this is a story of 40 Indian scientists, 4-page story of each scientist. And it's a very inspiring book. It doesn't cost very much. I have a PDF file of it. I can make it available to the organizers so they can make it available to all of you. So you can read through 4-page series of scientists of yesteryears. So if you look at this list of this, okay, first two in this list are from the 19th century. I said, 19th century. 23 of these 40 scientists, they become fellows of the Royal Society of London. So I said, they reduce the gap. Royal Society of London, that fellowship is given only to very selected scientists from England or from the rest of the world. So 23 of them did make it to that stage, and the British recognized them. So in this list of 40, I have said 14 out of the 15 of C.N.R. Rao's list are also there. And out of this list of 40 scientists from India, 2 of them were the Britishers who settled down in India. Okay. They never went back. It's not that the British, some of the British also were doing science, but they were not nurturing students. At one time, there were 4 fellows who were British scientists working in India who were fellows of the Royal Society, but they never taught any student. They just used people to just promote themselves. So, all right. So, this is 40, and this is in this list of 40. 6 of them are from Punjab. Okay, so he said Punjab's contribution in science has been there quite significant for quite a long time. So okay, so now let me take you a little bit backward. You heard the Takshila, Nalanda. We had universities in the past. Okay, but they were in the universities in the past. Then at some stage, Mughals ruled the India, and there were no more universities were created in the Mughal period. And Mughal period, incidentally, coincides with the period of Sikh gurus in India. Mughal ruled India just for 200 years, but Guru Nanak was born before Babur, and Guru Gobind Singh died 1 year after Aurangzeb died. So these two periods coincidentally are parallel. So we said 1757, Battle of Plassey, East India Company. East India Company was created in 1600. They came to India as traders. Okay, so now these traders only wanted to do some trade. Okay, so they didn't come here to do. But okay, long story short, somehow, they get into the tiff with the rulers because maybe the trade terms are not very favorable. And after the Battle of Plassey and the Battle of Buxar, there is a Treaty of Allahabad, and the East India Company gains the Diwani rights. They gain the rights to collect taxes on behalf of Emperor of India, not Queen of England or the King of England. We had Mughal emperors, remnants of it. So they gain this right to collect taxes on behalf of the euphemistically called the Emperor of India. And they collect taxes. Now, if they collect taxes, what do they do with it? They have to also collect taxes. Means you have to collect taxes from the people. So you must give something back to the people. If you have this process of continuously collection of taxes have to be maintained. Okay, so you have to govern. So now to govern, you must do something. So at some stage England had been so-called democratic country. So there is a parliament. So the parliament had given the rights to this trading company to go and do the trade in India, etc., etc. So the parliament gets involved, and they said, kuch na kuch spend karo for the people whom you are administering. So they were supposed to spend some money on the education. That is how the education agenda is commenced by the East India Company. So fine. So they set up the first kind of a higher education institution that is created is in 1782, and that's a Madrasa Aliyah. Kind of a that Madrasa Aliyah exists today as a university, and there is a Aliyah University came into being in 2008 in West Bengal. So it's something which is created in 1782 gets a formal recognition as a university only in 2008. So then there is also a Sanskrit Mahavidyalaya which is created in Banaras. Okay, and that happened in 1791, and that also has become a university today. It's called Sampurnanand Sanskrit Vishwavidyalaya Varanasi, and that happened only in 1958. So every 2 years, this trading company needed a renewal, and whenever they needed a renewal, the Parliament, British Parliament will step in and say, "Kuch karo aur." So they said, "No, you must spend 1 lakh rupees for the education of on education agenda of India." So this was 1830, and Ram Mohan Roy, who was very well-read person, was a social reformer, had started this Brahmo Samaj movement. He was given 1 lakh rupees to create Hindu college in Calcutta, 1870. In the meanwhile, some missionaries have also set up a college in south of India, in Kerala. So there is a college in Kerala, there is a college in Calcutta, Hindu college and a Christian college. So that Hindu college becomes a presidency college in 1854, and that becomes the nucleus of the Calcutta University in 1857. So okay. So now let's fast forward. So who were the mentors of scientific research at Calcutta. These three names, these photographs you saw in Professor Rajesh Arora's one of the projections. So there is a photograph of J.C. Bose, P.C. Ray, and Ashutosh Mukherjee. So J.C. Bose was a physicist, P.C. Ray is a chemist, and Ashutosh Mukherjee is a mathematician. The two of them had education in England. Ashutosh Mukherjee had educated only in Calcutta. He was the first person to do physics and masters together. But since he didn't have a degree from abroad, he was not employed by the Presidency College as a maths teacher. Long story short, his father was a lawyer. Something happens, so he then leaves his passion of mathematics, becomes a lawyer, becomes a very successful lawyer, becomes a judge, and eventually becomes a vice chancellor of Calcutta University. And as a vice chancellor of Calcutta University, he wants to start a process so that the Indians educated in India, who are bright, who are good, they can pursue their passion without the intervention of the rulers. So rulers would want at the high position in the academia also the English educated Englishmen. Whereas we want more of young people to reduce the gap. And how many? And so this is a process going on. Okay. So these three are the mentors of scientific research at Calcutta in colonial India. So J.C. Bose is born in 58. So P.C. Ray is born 1861. So Bose returns to Calcutta from England little earlier than P.C. Ray. And we heard from Professor Arora that J.C. Bose was not given the same salary that the Englishman received, and he protested. That's true. For 3 years, he didn't take any salary. Anyway, his family was well off. He could do all this. And eventually, the British agreed to give him the salary that they were giving to the Englishmen. And this differential in salary was huge. It's not, they say, factor of 2, but actually it's quite a large. I mean, a lecturer would be paid 200 rupees, whereas an Englishman will get 500 rupees. It was that kind of a difference. But anyway, both J.C. Bose succeeded, but P.C. Ray did not succeed. Only 3 Indians were in the class 1 education service. J.C. Bose, after a protest, D.N. Malik, who was a mathematician also in Calcutta, and one poor person who was in Madras. That's all. Then for next 30 years, no one else got into the class 1. Indians started to get into the class 1 only after the First World War. Okay, so it is from 1883 to 1919, no one else was in class 1. So anyway, J.C. Bose was a very innovative man. We are told that why he had invented wireless transmission, but he didn't get the Nobel Prize. But that's only half of the story. Let's not fool ourselves. Marconi was in Italy. He was a child prodigy. He had moved from Italy to England to progress whatever he had done it independent of J.C. Bose. Yes, J.C. Bose did it independently. Marconi did it independently. By date, J.C. Bose was earlier than Marconi, and that is later on recognized by Marconi's family. That is, if there was a fair play, the name of J.C. Bose should also have been recommended for Nobel Prize. But that doesn't happen because there is no Nobel Prize when all this gets discovered. It's 1895. Nobel Prize's process starts only from 1900 onwards. And after that, you have to be nominated for a Nobel Prize. If your name is not there before the committee, how will you get the Nobel Prize? So this is that. And Marconi had taken this thing very, very far. He had many, many more patents. He had made a product, whereas J.C. Bose discovered the science of it, demonstrated it, but didn't take it far. Didn't patent it and didn't take it towards a product or a technology and so on and so forth. And that is how he lost out the Nobel Prize. So anyway, this was just a side. That doesn't take the merit away from J.C. Bose, how great a man he was. Because Wireless is not the only thing that he did. He did many, many more things together. This thing. Nobel laureate Britain, who co-inventor of transistor, credits Bose with the first use of semiconductor crystals to detect radio waves. When this is done by Bose. Mott credits Bose as being at least 60 years ahead of his times. Mott also received a Nobel Prize in physics for anticipating the existence of P and N types of semiconductor. So J.C. Bose was indeed very great. Okay. So, okay. And all this is extracted from this book, Bright Sparks, whose PDF file I'll make it available for all of you. So, okay. Now, PC Ray. And PC Ray, again, when he came back, he faced the same problems that J.C. Bose had faced. J.C. Bose was not given any place to set up a lab. He had to set up a lab in a bathroom, which was unused bathroom. PC Ray had the same problem. So British were not interested in developing industries in India. And why will they develop industries in India? They are an industrial nation. And industrial revolution in England had started roughly at the same time that they won the Battle of Plassey. So they want to sell their goods. They will not want to have industrial research in India. But anyway, he goes on to find the Bengal pharmaceutical and chemicals. And the Nature, there's a British journal, is a Sir Prafulla was more than anyone else responsible for the great development of scientific research in India during past 50 years. And that is written in 1944. The same year, the A.V. Hill wrote that scientific research in India. So 50 years before that, these young people pursuing their passions reduce the gap between the rulers and the ruled. And that is how the story is. And this is Ashutosh Mukherjee. Ashutosh Mukherjee, I already told you, when he became a judge, he was a nuisance for the British. So in order to control him, they made him the Vice Chancellor of Calcutta University. Okay, they will run the Calcutta University. Now this guy was denied being a faculty member at Calcutta University. So now he wanted only the Indians to be appointed in Calcutta University. So what does he do? He comes up with a very clever idea. He creates a postgraduate college of science. And to run this postgraduate college of science, he creates chaired professorship. He reached out to the rich lawyer friends, got money from them, created the chaired professorships in physics, chemistry, maths, etc., etc. So these chaired professorships were meant to be given only to the Indians, not to the English. Englishmen anyway were appointing their own people wherever they wanted. So from these endowments, only the people of Indian origin to be made professors. So this was a clever thought of his, and he creates this postgraduate college of science, which is an affiliated college of Calcutta University. He himself was the vice chancellor of Calcutta University. So before his first 8 years term came an end, he gave the affiliation to this postgraduate college of science. College was in place by 1960. Okay, and now he commences the creation of university departments. If you go to any university today, there are physics department, chemistry department, all kinds of departments are there. But these were not there in India until the year 1960. So Ashutosh Mukherjee's brilliant idea was how to create university departments which would be headed by professors of Indian origin. And professors who have reduced the gap between the rulers and the ruled. So with this clever idea, Ashutosh Mukherjee created a professorship which was offered to both PC Ray and J.C. Bose as they were retiring from the Presidency College. But Bose didn't want that professorship, so Bose preferred to create an institute of his own. So he offered this professorship to C.V. Raman. C.V. Raman was a civil servant working in Calcutta, who in his spare time used to do research at the laboratories of Indian Association of Cultivation of Science. So Raman, who had no PhD degree, who had published papers in his spare time, he awards him an honoris causa degree, entices him to leave the civil service and accept the Palit professorship in physics at Calcutta University with no teaching duties, but only doing research at IACS. So this is what he did. So that is how C.V. Raman was, what should I say, nurtured to move forward, to reach the frontiers of his passion, reduce the gap, and do something which will get him the Nobel Prize. So this process, which starts at 1930, ends in 1928, when the Raman effect is announced, and in 1930 he receives the Nobel Prize in Physics. So you see the importance of this 1930 again and again. Okay, so fine. So this is a map which somebody gave it to me. So it is displayed somewhere in Calcutta. It says the science and technology institutions for research, etc., up to the start of the First World War. Okay, so you can just see where the technical colleges were, where what was. So this is just an information. You can look at it later on. So now Meghnad Saha. I told you, we started that I'm going to tell you the story of this. Saha was a student of both P.C. Ray and J.C. Bose when he studied. And Saha was also in the same class as that of Satyen Bose. He was born, as I told you, he was born in Dhaka. He had his matriculation in 1909, MSc in 1950, inducted by Ashutosh Mukherjee to teach MSc students. He himself has just completed MSc, so he's a topper of the class. So he appoints him as a teacher in that science college. So he has to teach MSc students. At the same time, they are all supposed to do research, pursue their passion, and try to reduce the gap. So first person to reduce the gap is Meghnad Saha. In a matter of 2 years, he writes 8 single author papers. The Calcutta University gives him a doctorate in science instead of a PhD in science. Okay, so that is a great first man to do it is Saha. So in 1919, he goes as Ashutosh Mukherjee arranged a traveling fellowship for him to go and spend 2 years in Europe, 1 year in England, 1 year in Germany, okay, to meet people at the frontiers of knowledge in his field. So this is how the Saha goes to England in 1919, comes back. Ashutosh Mukherjee again arranged a Khera professorship for him, but it was not as attractive as the professorship offered to C.V. Raman. So he left Calcutta and he accepted a professorship at Allahabad University. That is how in 1923, Saha moved to Allahabad. Okay, and by 1927, so he had been elected Fellow of the Royal Society. See, J.C. Bose was elected Fellow of the Royal Society in 1920. Raman became the Fellow of the Royal Society in 1924, and Saha became the Fellow of the Royal Society in 1927. Okay, so these are the scientific leaders of India up to the 1930, when Raman gets a Nobel Prize. First is to reduce the gap, reaching up to the Fellowship of the Royal Society, and then reducing the gap up to the Nobel Prize. Okay, so this is all. So now Saha, in 1930, he didn't have a science academy in India. The first science academy in India was set up by Saha as a provincial science academy for Agra and Audh. So it was a kind of an academy for the present day UP. So India has 3 science academies. Why should we have 3 science academies? All of them are called National Science Academies. The first one was created by Saha in Allahabad, and it was a provincial science academy. Second one was created by C.V. Raman in Bangalore in 1934, as he moved from after getting a Nobel Prize from Calcutta to Bangalore. So there is a second science academy. Then these provincial science academy had come into an agreement. No, we must, all provincial science academies must work together. So a National Institute of Sciences was created by Saha in Calcutta, to which all these science academies were loosely attached. The National Institute of Sciences, after independence, has become the Indian National Science Academy in New Delhi. Anyway, so Saha creates the Science Academy. Saha goes to America. In America, he sees, he goes to, sees this, he goes to state of Tennessee, and he sees Tennessee Valley there, and he sees how they control floods by building dams. and how they generate electricity from their dams, and so you have to control floods because it affects the agriculture, poor people, but you can control the floods. You can also produce power, and with that you can run the industry. So Saha is much thrilled. He comes back and says India must also have such river, because Bengal and Bihar, even today we have floods in Bengal and Bihar. So Bengal, Bihar, Odisha was a part of all this Bengal presidency. So he gives this idea of having flood controls via building other dams. Okay, so this Damodar Valley Corporation is on the lines of Tennis Valley Corporation. Then later on in Odisha, the Hirakud Dam is again comes up after the conception of Bhakra Dam in Punjab. So all these things are connected. Very this thing. Anyway, so I told you the Saha and Bhatnagar have to play a role. India will become independent. There is an education commission in India. Radhakrishnan, who was also a chaired professor at Calcutta University, a professorship arranged by Ashutosh Mukherjee for Radhakrishnan. So Radhakrishnan is the chair of the UGC, and Saha is a member of that UGC. So you can see this. Then he creates his Institute of Nuclear Physics in Calcutta. And then India becomes independent. There is an election, and Saha, motivated by A.V. Hill, fights the Lok Sabha elections. Independent member of Lok Sabha, he gets elected from South Calcutta, and arrives in Parliament. So all his friendship and bonhomie with Nehru comes to an end. So now Nehru is trying to evolve a program which is practical. He has to work with industrialists, rich people, this, that, and so on. It's not on those pure lines that Saha wanted, and they have differences. Anyway, so that's a long story. So this is just a list of 8 papers that he wrote when he was teaching the MSc students. All single author papers, only one of them was jointly written with Bose. You can see the greatness of Saha. Now, Bhatnagar. I told you that Bhatnagar was in Lahore. So Bhatnagar does his MSc from Lahore. And he lost his father and he was just 8 months old. So he is brought up by his maternal grandfather, who was an engineer from Thompson College of Engineering, Roorkee. Anyway, but his father's friend somehow, long story short, his father's friend, who was a principal of Dayal Singh School in Lahore. See, we heard about Arya Samaj, but Punjab had two social reform movement, Brahmo Samaj and Arya Samaj. Brahmo Samaj had started from Bengal. Arya Samaj was the creation of Swami Dayanand, but both these things were there. And Dayal Singh Majidhia, who was a grand son of a general of Ranjit Singh, he created Tribune as a newspaper. All of you, Tribune that you read every day was created by Dayal Singh Majidhia, and Dayal Singh Majidhia has become a Brahmo Samajist. And so Dayal Singh School was created to admit children of Brahmo Samajists, because Brahmo Samajists were considered outcasts. People will not have any relationship with them, they will not marry into people who become Brahmo Samaj, etc., etc. So this is how this Brahmo Samaj, and Bhatnagar's father was a Brahmo Samajist, and he used to teach in a Brahmo Samaj school in a town called Bera. So you see this now connections, There is this Arya Samaj, whose leader is Lala Lajpat Rai, born in 1864. And there is a guy who is a mentor of Bhatnagar, namely Ruchi Ram Sani, whose photograph was also there. So Ruchi Ram Sani was a Brahmo Samajist because he was much influenced by the Dayal Singh Majidhia. So Ruchi Ram Sani arranges for Bhatnagar to go abroad for a PhD. So Bhatnagar does his PhD in England. When he enrolls for a PhD with a professor in London, he has 2 more students who have come from Calcutta, who were students of J.C. Bose and P.C. Ray from Calcutta. So these 2 Bengalis and 1 Punjabi, they are all 3 students of the same professor in London, who was a physical chemist, namely F.G. Donnan. So Bhatnagar was the smartest of them. He finishes his PhD, he finishes his research in 2 years period, and the University of London gives him a DSc degree instead of a PhD degree, because he writes all his papers on his own. So William Bragg, who was his PhD Nobel laureate Bragg was his thesis examiner. He gives him the DSc degree. And Bhatnagar returns to Malviya's Banaras Hindu University, which had been created in 1960. So Bhatnagar is appointed as a research professor by Malviya in Banaras on the same terms as C.V. Raman was a professor in Calcutta. No teaching to be done. Do only research and you get a salary more than what a young teacher would get. So Bhatnagar was, so he for 3 years he was in Banaras. He did many things at Banaras, created research atmosphere in Banaras, even wrote the anthem of PHU. Kul Geet of Banaras, which everybody sings even today in Banaras, was written by a scientist, Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar, who was a physical chemist. So anyway, Lahore creates a university chemical laboratories in 1924, and Bhatnagar is appointed as a first director of University Chemical Laboratories at Lahore. He comes to Lahore in 1925. In next 15 years, he creates a school around himself. Whatever good you see in Punjab University today, it was all commenced at Lahore in 1919 onwards at the form of honor school education. All that is a contribution of Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar at Lahore. So, and I had told you earlier also that Bhatnagar and Saha had made contacts in England in 1990. So, for a while, they are both professors, one creating a school at Allahabad, the other creating a school at Lahore, but they team up together as the Second World War commences, and Bhatnagar is chosen to create the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research. So Bhatnagar creates scientific and industrial research, AV Hill Plan, etc., etc. India becomes independent, and Bhatnagar is the first Education Secretary of India. UGC is created, Bhatnagar is the first chairman of UGC in India. India has to have IITs, Bhatnagar is a member of the committee, which gives the plan for IITs. India must have all India institutes of medical sciences, PGI, etc., etc. Bhatnagar is into every committee. He is part of everything. So, okay, these are the 10 papers that Bhatnagar wrote, 9 papers that Bhatnagar wrote for his DSc degree, just parallel of Bhatnagar and Saha. This is a photograph which I got it from a book on Meghnad Saha, which was published in 2019. And you can see that PC Ray, okay, is there at the center, PCR. This is PC Ray. You can't see it. Can we switch off this light so that you can see the transparency is a little better? So this is PC Ray, MNS is Meghnad Saha, this is Bhatnagar. This is a photograph of 1990, okay? And it has many other bright people who were there in England at that time, all gathered around PC Ray. PC Ray was made a Sir. He became Sir PC Ray in 1990. So you realize Sir PC Ray. So obviously, PC Ray was considered a revolutionary in his own way, but he's worked for a government college all his life. He's made a Sir. So obviously, these people cannot participate in the independence movement along with the political leaders. You cannot do two things simultaneously. Okay, this is piece of the, and so the Saha had network of friends, all his contemporaries. So this I have given you photographs of 10 people. All these 10 people are born in the year within 12 months of each other, 1893, 1894. But Nagar also is born in 1894. But Nagar was 4 months younger to Saha, and he died about a year earlier than Saha. So you can see these names. How many of them became? It is Saha, Bose, J.C. Ghosh, J.C. Ghosh, J.N. Mukherjee, who made IARA as a university, S.K. Banerjee, who was the first Director General first Indian to be the Director General of Meteorology Department of India, Mahanalobis, who eventually made all the plans, 5-year plans for Nehru. Okay, S.K. Mitra, he is a man, radio physics Mitra, whose student was A.P. Mitra, who was the Director General of CSIR. So all these famous names, B.B. Ray, N.R. Sen, whose student was A.R. Roy Chaudhary, who extended this Einstein's theory of Einstein's equations of relativity. So these bunch of people Rapon studied at the same time, all friends of Saha. And all these are a part of those discussions and writing of the plan of development of India after the Second World War. Okay, this is Subhash Chandra Bose. This again is a photograph taken in 1938. Okay, so this is it is J.C. Bose with the Industries Ministers of India. India had elections in 1936, and these provincial governments were formed. So Bose called the meeting of all the industries ministers because that plan has to be implemented. The only non-minister in this photograph is Meghnad Saha sitting in the corner. And Meghnad Saha at that time was the president of National Institute of Sciences, the apex body of all the scientists. Okay, so this is Bhatnagar with you after independence. Okay, this is with Maulana Azad and Nehru. So you see this, there are these scientists who all have this equations with the political leaders. Because they are following the same agenda, essentially. Okay. So if the synergy is not there, you cannot implement the agenda. The synergy is needed. As I told you, there are elections in 11 states of India. And these elections on behalf of Indian National Congress, Nehru was in charge of the elections. So I told you that how this planning committee, Nehru was maneuvered to be the chairman of the committee. So all that is not it is not a figment of imagination. To convince you that what I have told you is not just that I just made it up. This I found it from this book, which was published in 2009. I was incidentally the editor of that book. So in that it says, Subhash Bose became the Congress president. Saha persuaded Bose to form a planning committee with Visvesvaraya as the chairman, etc., etc. All this, whatever I have told you, is beautifully described in this book, which was published in 2009. But this was not stated in 2009. It was stated on 30th of October 1984 by G. Venkatraman when he was giving a Foundation Day address at Bhabha Atomic Research Center. I served in TIFA for 40 odd years, and I was present when he gave this speech. So we use this occasion of centenary of Bhabha to have this transcript published in this edited book. So this photograph also was shown by Arun. Okay, this shows, Meghnad Saha with J.C. Bose in the year 1937, just before Bose died in Calcutta. So, Saha had great contemporaries, and Saha produced great students as well. So I have just given you a kind of students that Saha produced at Allahabad. Kichlu, who started the physics department at Lahore. Kothari, we all know Kothari Commission. Toshniwal, who created this Toshniwal Industries. R.C. Majumdar, who was a professor of theoretical physics at Delhi University. Bedi Nagchaudhary. Bedi Nagchaudhary was the last student of Saha before the war, whom he sent to Berkeley to bring the cyclotron. India today also is struggling to have those cyclotrons. All this is, Saha is the man who is behind everything. And this is physics department at Allahabad University with Saha, with A.C. Banerjee was a mathematician, Saha was a physicist, and Kothari you can see in the photograph. And this is how Saha used to invite, he reduced the gap between people at the frontiers of knowledge. And he used to invite people at the frontiers of knowledge to Allahabad to meet his students, to inspire them. This is Summerfield visiting Allahabad in 1929. So many students of Summerfield got Nobel Prize. This is Arthur Eddington, who was the Astronomer Royal visiting Allahabad in 1934. So, okay, come back to the story. In 1930, Raman gets the Nobel Prize. 1931, Raman and J.C. Ghosh seek the creation for advisory board for scientific research in India. So they rope in the editor of Nature to support them, but the Viceroy said no. Flatly no. Tata, the Indian industrialists pitch in. So Tata Iron and Steel, Tata Sons, which had the steel plant in Jamshedpur, they created a research lab in Jamshedpur. Today we have a national metallurgical lab in Jamshedpur, which is a CSR lab. So this is a precursor to that, what Bhatnagar would do as the years would come. So war starts, 39, Bhatnagar leaves, he is moved to Calcutta. And once he is in Calcutta, British gave him 5 lakh rupees to do military research in the universities of India. His own lab in Lahore was taken over for military research. So now he has this just small sum of money, 5 lakh rupees, to be distributed to Indian professors to do military research in the universities. So Bhatnagar invites Raman, Saha, Mitra, Ghosh, all of them to these CSR committees, okay, and they distribute money among themselves to aid the military research. In 41, Bhatnagar gave this idea of creating a national physical laboratory in Delhi and national chemical laboratories in Pune. And coincidentally, I am currently the chair of the National Research Council of NPL. So I had an access to all these stories from the archives of that. So anyway, so Bhatnagar is doing his work. Saha has a journal called Science and Culture, which he created in Calcutta, which he created at Allahabad. So in order to motivate Indian scientists that they must do this, you must do that, he continuously writes his editorials in Science and Culture. So he builds up this atmosphere to get all the scientists together in 1943, okay, to write a plan for development of India. Okay, so he invites all of them. Saha is there, Garkar is there, Sokhi is there, Bhatnagar is there, Mitra is there, J.N. Mukherjee is there, Mahalanobis is there, B. Subramaniam is there, Baba is there. All these people are there, okay, to discuss what should happen to India after post-World War. And then A.V. Hill is invited. So I have just given a list of where the top Indian scientists were, and they were all over the place, and their disciplines of work. You know, there is a botanist, there is a physicist, there is a doctor, there is this, that, and so on. So all these people are there, okay, who wrote this grand plan. What did they discuss? How should the wartime infrastructure in science and technology be assimilated for peacetime civilian organizations? Someday the war would end. Now you have done all these things, use it for the people's welfare. What should be overall organizational structure of science and technology adopted for post-war and independent India? How should India benefit from post-colonial or Commonwealth structure? This is 43 years. We don't know whether we'll get a Purna Swaraj or we'll get Hafda Swaraj. Okay, so but whether we get Purna Swaraj or Hafda Swaraj, India must develop. And how we should do it, all this is there. They said there should be a National Research Council, there should be that many boards, who should be a part of this. Complete date plan is there, which was published. But what did Bhatnagar say in that 43 this thing? He says, first concern of government during the period of transition from war to peacetime would be to find employment of demobilized defense persons. So many officers have been sent to fight in the Europe, Indian officers. Indians were not being recruited as officers in Indian army, but when the war came in, large number of young Indians were inducted into the Indian army as an officer. So they will come back. How to use them? We will need raw materials, information on raw materials. We need increase in food production and would require fertilizer. We need fertilizer industry is needed. Fuel and power resources are needed for industrialization. Shipbuilding, automobile, other things are needed. Should we have a chemical industry? But to have industries, you need finance. So you need management, financial management. You need banks, you need all kinds of trade agreements, all kinds of present day GSTs and taxes, etc., etc. So all this has been thought of by these thought leaders of India long before. So now, but Nagar is now what should partnership between the scientists and the industrialists? He says industry must come to the aid of science. For industry is not a process of making money for individuals. This is what Nagar is saying in 43. At the meeting of Institution of Engineers in Delhi in 1943. Ideals of industry and science are therefore really identical. Both are and should be servants of the people, and gain for self should be incidental in the process. you find the political leaders of India still talking in this language. But this is not the language of political leaders. This is the language of thought leaders of India, who at that time were the university teacher scientists of India. So A.V. Hill visits Baba. Baba also seeks advice from A.V. Hill. I worked in Tata Institute of Fundamental Research for 40 years. Tata Institute of Fundamental Research came into being on 1st of June 1945 in Bangalore. It was created by Baba. You have seen this film, right? Rocket Boys. I don't know how many of you have seen this serial, Rocket Boys. There is a serial on Sony TV, Sony Live. It's a 6-part serial, Rocket Boys. It's a story of Bhatnagar and story of Baba and Sarabhai. But Baba and Sarabhai could realize all their dreams because Bhatnagar and Saha laid all the groundwork to get them the support to create India's atomic energy program and the space program. All this is Rocket Boy series is there. Anyway, so it's okay. So A.V. Hill report has 24 sections. Okay, everything is there. What all India must have. It has 24 sections: medical research, agricultural research, industrial research, technology, meteorology. Most importantly, it said create 1,000 scholarships so that young people who could not go abroad to have an exposure to frontiers of science and technology. It's a fully paid scholarship to be created by Government of India to enable the young people to go and work at the frontiers of science at the best institutions globally. This is one of the recommendations of A.V. Hill. This was not a thought that the Indian scientists had articulated. But A.V. Hill realized unless you have people to drive it fast, it will not get achieved. So this is one of the recommendations. Second recommendation, he says, if you want to have young people to work for this agenda, then young people must be paid well. The gap between the salaries of civil servants and the technologists and scientists should be the other way around. It's the scientists and technologists who should get more money than the civil servants. IAS officers should not get more salary than the professors in IITs and PGI and AIMS and so on and so forth. This took 60 years to realize. It happened only in the year 2016. But all this is articulated in 1944 by A.V. Hill, who himself was a mathematician turned biologist turned a politician. So all this is there. Hill report has many. I have given a list of recommendations of the Hill report. Okay, you can read through it later. Okay, India needs first quality brains trained in atmosphere of original research and practical experience. Plan for creation of MIT-like institute. That is all the IITs can. Reduce the gap in salaries of civil servants and researchers to attract the best mind for the academia. Support universities as scientific education is the fundamental basis of scientific progress. That create departments of biological sciences. Today we say 21st century is the century of life sciences. But he said it 50 years in advance. Okay. So, okay, fine. So, and A.V. Hill acknowledged that all this he got from the Indian scientist. He says a factor which enabled things to get done was Sir Shanti himself. Shanti is Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar. Personally, I threw myself a great deal on Shanti's shoulder while in India, and Shanti carried the burden around the country. It was due to his energy, skill, and knowledge, and his great influence with his colleagues and with industry and the government that it had been possible to get so many things done. And he says, disaster lies ahead if India's industrial development and national welfare are not immediately attended to. And this you can send. It has been stated on 29th of October 1944. And what did Bhatnagar say? He says, there is no doubt that the short stay of a scientist has produced many lasting effects on Indo-British cooperation than have the goodwill missions of politicians from India to England and England to India. So this is again one of the recommendations of A.V. Hill. Go to America. So this is Bhatnagar and Saha leading a delegation of Indian scientists to America in January of 1945. They are meeting Millikan, Robert Millikan, Nobel laureate Millikan, and we all know Millikan, electron charge to mass ratio was given by Millikan. That is what got him the Nobel Prize. Millikan, of course, had visited India as well. So all right. So what happens after 44? We have a Sargent Committee report to revamp education in India. We have a Bombay plan written by the industrialists of India, how to do industrial development of India. AICTE comes into place in 45. Baba needs TIFR in 45. Nalini Ranjan Sarkar Committee submits a plan for having IITs in India, but Nagar becomes secretary in 45. This I have already told you. Okay. So, okay, let's move forward. So, Sargent plan, how to revamp education in India. We talk of new education policy 2020. If you read through this slide and the next slide, you will realize that many of the things which are being stated as new in the new education policy 2020, they are the unfilled agenda of the first plan, which was conceived in 1944, where Bhatnagar was also a member. J.C. Ghosh was also a member. So many people were there. Okay, so everything is there. Pre-primary education. Okay. And mother tongue to be the medium of instruction. There is nothing new. Okay, mother tongue. Even the Englishman said that mother tongue should be the medium of instruction if people have to be creative and they have to realize their full creativity. So it's a Sargent Committee's recommendation that India should have a UGC, and India does have a UGC with Bhatnagar as the chairman, and Bhatnagar himself was a member of the committee which recommended that there should be a UGC. Okay. So school boards. We all have passed through the school. The school boards, how did the school board start in India? School boards were the college entrance examination. All of you must have written All India entrance examination, right? That was essentially the school board examination as the universities were created. So universities used to do the job of school boards. At some stage, the university education and school education was separated out. The college entrance exams were discontinued, and that is how the school boards come. The last college entrance exam of Calcutta University happened in 1909, and Saha and Bose wrote that 1909 exam. After that, that exam was discontinued. The school board also have a very interesting history. We had a 10+2 system. Then we introduced higher secondary, which was 11. Then we made 10+2 + 2 was made into 11+3. Then we made 12+3 + 2. We added one more year in our higher education from 1986, when the new education policy or national education, whatever it is, which came in 1986. So all these things have been evolving. How the NCERT gets created, etc., etc. I have just made a summary of it. You can read through it later. Bombay Plan for Economic Development. That also is articulated in 1944. Who articulates it? It is Birla, Tata, Lala Shriram, Kasturbai, Lalbhai, Purushottam Das, Thakkar Das, and 3 Tata executives, namely Ardashir Dalal, A.D. Shroff, and John Mathai. Ardashir Dalal was an ICS officer who resigned from ICS in 1930 and went and became a director of Tata Sons Limited. He was working for Tata Steel for 10 years. So when this plan is articulated, now the plan has to be implemented. What do the British do? They induct Ardashir Dalal as a member of the Viceroy's Committee. So essentially, he is made a planning minister of the pre-independent government. So he also continues to be a member of that planning minister for Nehru's National Cabinet in 1946 itself. So now you can see this connect. But Nagar is the one who was cooperating with Tatas to create the National Chemical Lab in Pune and National Metallurgical Lab in Jamshedpur. And this Ardashir Dalal is the minister to whom Bhatnagar is reporting. So all this admixture is there, thinking people, the moneyed people, and the decision maker politicians and the bureaucrats all working together for a common agenda. And this is what is needed for the progress of the nation, not everyday fights. So this is Nalini Ranjan Sarkar Committee, of which Bhatnagar is a member. He says, due to post-war reconstruction in Europe, engineers and technologists would not be available for India. New technical education and research program ought to be initiated in India at utmost speed and determination in India. So it's not only the IITs. There is also a committee which is headed by Joseph William Bohr. He headed the Health Survey Committee and Development Committee in 43. It submitted the report in 1946. It looked at the public health, medical relief, professional education, and medical research and industrial health. This is how AIMS, PGIs came up in post-independent India. To bring out AIMS, Rajkumari Amrit Kaur was the health minister in Nehru's this thing. She was from the princely family of Kapurthala. She got the AIMS going. PGI was made into a national institution by the next health minister of India, again from Punjab, Sushila Nair. So the two first women health ministers of India gave us the AIMS and the PGI, both from Punjab. So how much does it cost to have an IIT? It was envisaged to cost 3 crore rupees. In today's, the 3 crores is 1,000 crores. This is why in today also you need. So detailed plan is there. Okay, now, Bhatnagar's view on technical education in India. Technical education has not kept pace with the engineering education and shows limited development both in range of subjects covered and the number of institutions providing such courses. If steps are not taken with a sense of urgency to develop and train research facilities on a scale commensurate with the needs of the country, the situation may get beyond remedy. This is 48. Okay, this again, Bhatnagar in medical research. But Bhatnagar also turned his attention on medical research, helping, it should be B.L. Bhatia, not S.L. Bhatia, helping B.L. Bhatia to persuade A.V. Hill to speak to Lady Mountbatten about the creation of All India Institute of Medical Sciences in Delhi. So Edwina Mountbatten's strong ties to nursing and very close relationship with Nehru were well known to A.V. Hill and P.M.S. Blackett. Blackett also was a Nobel laureate, who was consulted on Medical Sciences Institute. I asked Mountbatten's wife, who was keenly interested in medical and particularly nursing services, to keep an eye on it. This may have helped the implementation of More Committee report, which had been published in 1946. Okay, so same people, okay, and a very large agenda. But the decisions have to happen at the level of the Prime Minister, so everything has to converge at one place. So these are the 5 national labs that Bhatnagar created. This is how Baba created this TIFR, and Bhatnagar, Baba sought money from CSR, from Bhatnagar CSR to create TIFR. And he had asked, he said, whatever money you are going to spend on National Physical Laboratory, give me 10% of it, I'll take care of the fundamental research agenda of India. And this is what Bhatnagar did. And that is how Bhatnagar became. These things I got from the archives of TIFR because I had access to all those things. These are not in public domain. And TIFR was declared a National Center for Nuclear Science and Mathematics, again at the suggestion of Bhatnagar. And Bhatnagar also helped Vikram Sarabhai for the creation of PRL. So I recommend all of you try to see this Rocket Boys, the serial which is there on the Sony TV. Lots of things are wrong there. In there, Sahai is shown as a villain. It's a fictitious character they have created there. All that is Bollywood filmization. Forget that, but you will get the story all the same. So, okay, this is Bhatnagar at the foundation stone, at the laying of the foundation stone of TIFR on 1st of January 1954. And he passed away on 1st of January 1955. Suddenly he passed away at a science congress. So when he passed away, He was the helping Nehru in all kinds of things. Then J.C. Ghosh arrives after Bhatnagar passed away to help the planning committee. But Ghosh also doesn't live very long. He passed away in 59. And after that, the P.C. Mahalanobis takes care of the planning agenda of India. So as I told you about Ruchiram Sahni, Ruchiram Sahni's son was Birbal Sahni, who was the first botanist of India to be made a FRS. And Bhatnagar and Birbal Sahni had great comradeship. And Birbal Sahni had created an institute in Lucknow. And this is just the story of this thing. And Bhatnagar was also close to this D.N. Wadia, this Wadia Institute of Himalayan Geology at Dehradun. So Wadia and Birbal Sahni constituted a powerful team in minerals and petrochemicals in 47 and 48. And Bhatnagar and Bhabha needed just such a team for the realization of the programs of CSIR and the atomic energy. So this is Birbal Sahni and Bhatnagar together for you. This Birbal Sahni looks like Nehru, right? And he always was in this attire because Birbal Sahni was born on the same date as Nehru. He was born on 14th November 1891. Nehru was born on 14th November 1889. They were both together at Cambridge for a while. And he was at Lucknow and was so enamored by Nehru that all his life he dressed like, he attired like Nehru only. This is Ruchiram Sahni for you. Ruchiram Sahni was a contemporary of Ashutosh Mukherjee. He is the one who created Punjab Science Institute at Lahore on the lines of Indian Association of Cultivation of Science that Rajesh Aroraji told us, which was created by the Dr. Mahendralal Sarkar. Very interesting story. And this is Mahalanobis for you. And Mahalanobis had said statistics must have a clearly defined purpose, one aspect of which is scientific address, the other is human welfare. Yeah. And this is the defense science in India. Who created the defense science structure in India? First advisor to Ministry of Defense was Kothari, and he was succeeded by Bhagwantam, who was the last student of C.V. Raman at Calcutta. Same people. That is how we have a continuity of programs in independent India. Agricultural research again has its own story. The hero of agricultural research is B.P. Paul, a Punjab-born Brahmadas Paul, whose name was changed into Benjamin Pierre Paul in Burma, where his father was posted. He was a doctor. He used to emphasize that what India needs is not just agricultural education, but education for agriculture. If the Indian political class had this education for agriculture, we wouldn't have farmers' deaths in India. Right. It says, Nobel laureate Borlaug said, it was during Paul's leadership that the agroeconomic research equaled the best in the world. He was truly the architect of India's green revolution. Bhatnagar as chairman UGC. What is the first act of Bhatnagar as chairman UGC? His first act was to announce the increase in salaries of all the college and university teachers by 25%. University teachers in different universities were paid differently. Teachers at Lahore was paid the maximum. So he brought everybody's salary to the same level as that of what is Lahore. Today, Punjab is not able to pay its teachers. Great examples that Bhatnagar said we are not able to follow. Anyway, this is a story how the salary agenda has increased. And only in 2016, the gaps in the salary structure of teachers and civil servants could be bridged 40 years after the creation of UGC. And this was recommended by A.V. Hill. Okay, so these are some quotes from Meghnad Saha. He says, it is necessary that the scientific men in India should try to impress upon the government, the states and the public bodies the need for encouragement of scientific research and for a scientific handling of economic and industrial problems of the country. So this is what Saha said, one very famous quote of Saha. Scientists are often accused of living in ivory tower and not troubling their mind with realities. And he says, apart from my association with political movements in my juvenile years, Saha participated in some strike when he was a school student, and he was a marked man. He was not allowed to be a part of the government in his entire life till the Indian independence. Okay, he says, I had lived in ivory tower up to 1930, but science and technology are as important for administration nowadays as law and order. I have gradually glided into politics because I wanted to be of some use to the country in my own humble way. So the narrative that I have given you, for that I have picked up these quotes from a book by Robert Anderson, Nucleus and the Nation. He says, Indian scientists passed the war years in relative isolation till 1944. When they began to plan nuclear research and went on a tour to atomic research facilities in Britain, Canada, and United States. Okay, that Heavy Hill's recommendation. Revealing curiosity and awareness while visiting some of these facilities, they were questioned by American intelligence officers early in 1945 to uncover how much they really knew, because the bomb was exploded in August of 45, and they visited Millikan in January of 45, and they were already talking of nuclear fission, bomb, this, that, and so on. So Indian scientific leadership was keeping themselves abreast of the frontiers of knowledge. They were as smart as the science leaders all across the world, and they had all these networks, and it is those networks only that they used for the accelerated development of India. So thank you very much.
So, sir has very well explained how Indian scientists plan for scientific research and development of India in the leadership of Meghnad Saha and Shanti Swarup Bhattacharjee. He also highlighted the contributions of various scientists, specifically Justice Sir Ashutosh Mukherjee, Sir J.C. Bose, and Sir P.C. Ray. He also presented various important milestones in Indian education. Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your great ideas with us. Now, we'll take a break for lunch. We'll meet again at 3 p.m. in the auditorium itself, and online participants are also requested to join back at 3 p.m. All of you are invited for lunch in the guest house of the institute.